Imagine, just for a second, the absolute crushing pressure of an entire nation resting right on your shoulders. Now imagine trying to carry that immense weight when you aren't even old enough to vote. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that honestly feels a bit impossible. It's the cinematic, real-life drama of a young boy named Edson Arantes do Nascimento, a name that, well, the world would very quickly simplify to Pele. You see, back in 1958, the world showed up in Sweden expecting a totally standard football tournament, but instead, they witnessed a literal phenomenon. This is the incredible story of how a boy conquered the globe. 17 years old. I mean, think about that for a moment. He was just 17. Way too young, or at least that's what many of the experts believed at the time, to be anywhere near the world's greatest sports tournament, let alone absolutely dominate it. At an age when most teenagers are just trying to figure out their high school exams, Pele was about to completely rewrite history. Okay, let's dive into this because the context here is absolutely vital. You have to remember 8 years prior to this exact moment, Brazil suffered an unthinkable heartbreak. They call it the Maracanazo, a devastating loss on their home soil that left the entire nation genuinely traumatized. They were desperate, and I mean desperate, for redemption. So the burning question was, could a completely unproven teenager truly be the one to heal a broken footballing nation? To really understand the miracle of Sweden, we first have to transport ourselves back to where it all began. Long before the explosive fame, the flashing cameras, and all that global adoration, Pelé was just a kid growing up in Bauru, Brazil. His family wasn't wealthy by any stretch, and daily life was a serious struggle. There were definitely no pristine, multi-million-dollar training academies for him. Because his family couldn't afford proper equipment, Pelé just improvised. He played with makeshift alternatives, sometimes even just stuffing socks together to make a ball. The streets literally became his classroom. It's actually a pretty powerful reminder that sometimes having strict constraints is exactly what forges true creative genius. Playing like this forced him to develop rare creativity, unbelievable balance, and a level of ball control that was simply unheard of. The game became his language. Now, this unique talent quickly drew the attention of the club Santos, where he rapidly became one of Brazil's brightest young stars. But the world stage, that was an entirely different beast. And here's the craziest part. His remarkable 1958 World Cup story almost never happened at all. Right before the tournament kicked off, Pelé suffered a severe knee injury. It was actually serious enough that Brazil began the World Cup without him. He was stuck watching from the sidelines as the early matches passed by. Questions were swirling everywhere. Would he recover in time? And more importantly, would the national team coach actually take the massive gamble of risking a hobbled 17-year-old in a major international tournament? Well, eventually, the historic decision was made. He was going to play. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, because what unfolds next is without a doubt one of the most rapid, dramatic ascensions in the entire history of sports. Over the span of just 10 days, from June 19th through to June 29th, a teenager would systematically dismantle the greatest football teams on Earth.
It's June 19, 1958, the quarterfinals. Brazil is facing off against Wales, and the tension in the air was absolutely suffocating. Neither side could find a breakthrough. The clock was relentlessly ticking down, and the pressure was mounting heavily on the Brazilian squad. Then, suddenly, inside the penalty area, the ball finds the 17-year-old. Amidst all that chaos, he displayed a level of total composure that completely defied his age. He controlled the ball, spun around, and fired.
One goal. That was it. The only goal of the entire match. Brazil won 1-0. This teenager had delivered exactly when it mattered most. It was his very first World Cup goal, and it was the exact moment the whole globe started to sit up and take notice. But trust me, the true cinematic climax was still to come. We shift now to the semifinal against France. Now, France had one of the absolute strongest attacking lines in world football, and everybody predicted a really grueling, exhausting test. Instead, Pelé unleashed a performance that left the entire stadium utterly speechless. He struck first, easily piercing the veteran French defense. And then, he did it again, a second goal that just entirely broke the spirit and the momentum of that French squad. And then again, a spectacular, mind-bending hat trick right on the world's biggest stage. Newspapers across the globe literally went into a frenzy. Seasoned commentators were struggling to find the words to describe what they were witnessing. His movement was just effortless. His imagination on the pitch was limitless. He played with a supreme, soaring confidence that made professional, world-class defenders look like amateurs. Brazil absolutely dismantled France, cruising to a stunning 5-2 victory. The 17-year-old was no longer just some promising youngster Overnight, he was instantly transformed into the tournament's biggest, most electrifying global star. June 29, 1958. We're in Stockholm. It's Brazil versus the host nation, Sweden. Early on in the match, adversity struck hard. Sweden scored first, and the home crowd erupted into this deafening roar. In that moment, almost any young player would have frozen up. They would have panicked. But Pele did not. Brazil responded magnificently, attacking with flair. And then, pure magic happened. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why he became a legend. Let's break down one of the most famous goals in football history step by step. Step 1. Pelé receives the ball right inside the penalty area with that same unshakable composure we've been talking about. Step 2. With a breathtaking touch, he exquisitely lifts the ball directly over the head of a helplessly turning Swedish defender. Step 3. Before the ball even hits the ground, he smashes a historic volley straight into the back of the net. The sheer artistry of this goal was so overwhelming, so beautifully executed, that the crowd audibly gasped. And then, something incredibly rare happened in sports. Even the rival Swedish supporters began to applaud him. It wasn't just a sport anymore, it was art. The final whistle blew. History was confirmed. Another massive 5-2 victory, with Pelé scoring twice in the final. Brazil were world champions for the very first time. The boy king had conquered the world. Because, as you can imagine, the immense weight of that entire journey finally took its toll. As the reality of the victory set in, the emotional dam just broke. The 17-year-old collapsed directly onto the grass, completely overwhelmed, weeping tears of joy and sheer relief as all his teammates rushed to gather around him. These became some of the most iconic images in sports history. A child crying on the pitch, having just single-handedly erased a nation's 8-year trauma. What he did in 1958 literally changed the fabric of the sport forever. That single victory transformed Brazil into an undisputed football superpower. As we know, Pelé would go on to win World Cups again in 1962 and 1970. He'd score more than 1,000 goals in his career, but perhaps most importantly, he introduced a style of play to the world that was joyful, creative, and utterly fearless. So the crucial point is perfectly captured right here. Not merely a champion, not merely a star, but the birth of a legend. Whenever we debate the greatest teenage achievements in history, 1958 is for sure the gold standard. His rise proved that greatness can emerge from the most unexpected places, like from makeshift footballs in the streets of Peru, and it proved that age absolutely does not define your capacity for achievement. We're going to wrap up this explainer with a thought for you to carry with you. Sometimes the biggest stage truly does belong to the youngest dreamer. Think about it. If a 17-year-old boy from Peru, recovering from a bad injury and carrying the heavy weight of a traumatized nation, can rise up and conquer the entire world through sheer imagination and belief, where will the next impossible dreamer emerge? Keep watching, because history is always waiting to be rewritten.